We'll call this April 9th, 2018 meeting of the Fayette County Area Plan Commission to order. Will you please join me in the pledge to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And next item is the roll call, and the secretary has arrived. Come in.
Thank you. I no longer have to take notes.
I'm sorry, I thought the meeting started at 7:30.
That's the other one, Deb.
Wrong meeting.
Well, you've had a tough year so far with us, haven't you?
I'm telling you. You think I just started or something?
Yeah, acting like a rookie.
Okay. I got my minutes done. Roll call.
Roll call.
Where we're at.
Ruby Seiler.
Present.
Jason Waterman.
Present.
Dick O'Neill.
Here.
Ed Harrell.
Here.
Leota King.
Here.
Shirley Weiss.
Here.
Chad Frank.
Here.
Warren Sudoff.
Well, Mr. Sotoff, he's at a school for training for his job right now, and so he's I forget where it's at, but he's in southern Indiana, so it's work related when Mr. Sotoff is not here.
Okay. Stephanie McCann.
Here.
Bill McDaniel.
Present?
Colin Judd.
Here.
And the secretary.
So we do have a quorum. And we do have minutes.
We had minutes from,
January.
you had them already. I have the
Easy. All
March meeting here.
right, that you're bringing those also.
That's the BZA minutes.
Yes.
Okay.
I had
Well,
something.
we'll get 2 months then for the next meeting. for
Carry that
you.
over, yeah, we'll carry that over
Okay.
till the next
Okay.
meeting. Okay. No public hearings. Next item then is sign regulation update.
Okay, now before we go on and ask any comments or questions or anybody about this, is that I don't know if anybody has paid attention to or saw in the Indianapolis Star this weekend, and then a couple, 3 weeks ago, there was a previous article I read. It's in Hamilton County. Now, it happens to be a lawsuit over, as with our regulations, such as others you make reference to, they cannot be in the public right-of-way. Well, the person who brought the lawsuit is over a campaign sign. They didn't differentiate with campaign sign or anything else in the regulations, but he had difficulty, said it is not possible to find out where the extent of the county right-of-way is located. Now, that leads into, so the question with that is that, as I think some people are aware that in different locations, whether the city or in the county, with a later subdivision, later parts of the city of Connersville, with a subdivision, the subdivision streets are dedicated, say, to the city of Connersville or Fayette County. And those are legally actually defined and surveyed. Then you have other older parts in the city of Connersville and then other parts out in Fayette County where you have the county, within the county roads, the property actually comes up to the center line on the roads. And then there's been this thing referred to as apparent right-of-way. That's the correct term that's in that information form, correct? But there's things you have to go through to go from the apparent right-of-way to really make it a right-of-way. So this is part of where problem with the lawsuit's coming in. If you don't have all these records and you can't really find them, okay, this is one of those things that could seem a trivial lawsuit but could have significant changes for zoning codes in Indiana. So I sent a response to the Indiana chapter of the American Planning Association, waiting for responses. I'm just wondering if perhaps one way is that, okay, just make it clear rather than making reference to the signs must be no closer than, say, X feet from the edge of the public right-of-way. Whether it would be suitable, sufficient, or legally defensible, to say that. Okay, and it's not just all, it'd be all signs, not just temporary signs or permanent signs, but all private signs must be located, placed on, mounted, placed on, say, private property. And then they need to be, then you just have across the board, and in no case any closer than, say, X feet, say, from the edge of the road, the edge of the road surface, which is what one of the lawsuits that Warren came up with is really revolving around the road surface, edge of the right-of-way, what's this, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of potential complexity that goes on, and this is the one with one of the challenges that's going on with the, or should I really even make reference to that because it is okay, there's no problem with making reference to it? Okay. Now, the idea is that with that particular lawsuit is using these particular two pieces of case law that cast doubt on the public right-of-way unless it's really transferred to the jurisdiction. So I'm thinking that perhaps this is a way to then make clear that you can only place them on private property. You can't place private signs on public property. And then they need to be so far back from the edge of the road for all types of signs. And this gets into the blocking the side of the vision. So that's one thing with what we already have in there. Need, I think, something along those lines as far as another revision. And that's the only thing I can think of right now that still has popped up that needs any kind of change. Does anybody have any questions about that? Is that pretty clear of what's going on? Oh, your understanding with this, Leota?
Yes, I have property on 8th Street. I own all the way to the middle of 8th Street.
Yep, exactly. So a lot of the older parts of town are like that. So this gets around the,
In other words, like it is in the county.
like it is in the county. Okay, what's been traditionally treated as even parts of, within the city of Connersville, where the property lines go to the center of the street, but you have the utility strip and then you have the sidewalk. So traditionally, what has been considered the actual edge of the public right-of-way is the resident, the homeowner's side of the sidewalk. But when it's actually what really is and you have to then go back to the edge of the right-of-way, really, based on case law, so potentially the edge of the actual public road. This might be the way around it to then just between. They can only be placed on private property and must be X feet away and a sufficient distance not to block views of traffic. So, does anybody have any questions or comments on that?
From the edge of the road,
From the edge of the
not right away.
yeah, the edge of the road. And this gets us around the potentially sticky concept of defining really what the right-of-way is.
That's why I asked.
Because it
That can
varies,
That can vary.
because when you go back into some of the things when, about what year did Jerry do that survey? It was what, in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was long.
Okay,
a while ago.
but what
Before
he,
me.
yeah, and what was done was identified, used as a basis of saying the edge of the right-of-way were all these, fence lines. So you had variations from 35 up to 40 feet. Indiana State Code, I think, is, 40 feet from the center line is the apparent right-of-way, but you have to go through a process to actually make it the right-of-way. So this is just language then to just avoid that possible problem.
So the language should say,
It should be something along the lines of, so any sign, whether temporary or portable. Okay, any private sign, temporary or portable. Okay, may be placed only on private property and must be at least, say whether it's 15 feet, 20 feet back from the actual edge of the road. And I think I have something in there with and I think that's what I actually have for no part of any part of the sign structure there needs to be, such as between the 3 and the 9 feet, needs to be anything between that height needs to be at least 15 feet back from the actual edge of the right-of-way. So I think I already have something in place that can actually be modified that across the board to eliminate the potentially problematic language. Look like you're thinking about that, Jed.
I am.
Yeah. But in any case is now with, one thing is I think some of you saw the revised memo I made. The first memo I prepared was a 7-page memo. And if there's any comments on it, whether it's sufficiently legible, readable with the, with what I prepared as far as the, and this would be the one that actually would be posted online along with the existing and then the proposed replacement sign regulations. So that'd be the discussion of why and the basic things are being changed within it. And then the one I provided, the article I provided from the Washington Post, might be the best non-legalistic or planning language article I've come across on explaining the Reed versus Town of Gilbert. So, and do you think there'd be any problem, or would I probably need to try to get some type of permission from the Washington Post to post that on a county website? I mean, we're not generating any income from it.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt to ask, but I can't foresee a problem.
Okay, I guess I can, yeah.
We're just
Now, whether or not they'd ever actually respond to me,
Sure, that'd be the question.
yeah. But but I think this would also be a good art, in addition to the other, if we could post it, I think this would be a good article to post online.
Well, I'm sure you could just share the link if nothing else.
Yeah,
Post
yeah,
to
that's
site
true
so
with the
they
link.
get the clicks.
Yeah, then the link, yeah, that'd probably be the best, safest way to go and the quickest way to go. Now, with what I provided as far as this draft 7, any comments or anything on the language, anything, any items of the substance within the regulations?
Covered a lot of it.
Oh, surely you had something for me, Ed. You usually do.
No,
Not this time. Wow.
I say we covered it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the whole thing right there, well, on the tables, this would be where the setback would be, and that's where we already have it, the information. And I think there's someplace also in the pros which would have that actual change in language and setbacks. Okay. Mr. Judd, anything that you came across again?
No.
Okay. All right. And anything that you might be concerned about being a the city council representative?
I'm trying to think about the setback distance, how that would impact with sidewalks and
Yeah.
small yards and fences and
Yeah.
that would be what I was thinking of earlier, what kind of questions that would arise.
Yeah. Now, because of course the problem that we would get into is that when it comes to when things are placed in the city right away, within that distance from the actual edge of the
Edge of
road.
the road.
So say if it's 15 feet, if it's closer than that. Then I think part of that would be then the process, there should probably be some type of notification process to the people with the signs that they have them, such as whether it's campaign signs or anything else. But I think a lot of that can probably be alleviated by just the letters I used to provide for the chairs of the local political parties. Then for example, is I don't know if people recall for a while we had a lot of the crosses within between the sidewalk and then the street, which were what did they say? What Jesus is the answer or something like that. But those crosses right there, and so, but I couldn't help but think then if you have these, what would the response be then if someone right next to it put in a Allah Akbar? So if someone put something with another religion next to it, well, you can't remove one, you can't with the other, you can't let someone else do this, because then we're getting into a discretionary aspect of, okay, letting some signs go, enforcing against some, but not enforcing against
No, I'm
others.
thinking distance. To give you an example on Central Avenue.
Yeah.
You go down, Brian puts out a little thing on the sidewalk, or I'm just making an example, of listing daily specials. Technically, if he's within 15 feet, which you don't have 15
Yeah.
feet, he's in violation.
Yep. That's exactly, this is where it comes in. Now, then the other one that you have is, do you then just go ahead and allow anybody to put anything in with, say, next to the edge of the road? I
I think
mean,
a temporary sign versus permanent would be different.
yeah,
Temporary, obviously, we're all thinking political, but it's not just political.
it's all kinds of signs.
It's all kinds of signs. That was my thought concerning was Central Avenue, put a little chalkboard out there like you see in other towns where they're advertising their specials.
Well, we already have a provision in there for the T signs and then also those, the sandwich board signs.
Right.
So we do already have a provision
But the
for
15
those.
foot doesn't apply to that?
No, it doesn't apply to those.
That would be my question.
Yeah, so no, it doesn't apply to those, the language that we already have in there. This would be all the ones where people, up and down the street, whether it's the contractor signs that you see.
Right.
Well, it doesn't really matter what it is, but, because, we really can't
It's gotta be
differentiate.
15 foot from the edge of the road.
So, yeah, so whatever would be, so the whole idea is that it just needs back far enough from.
So you're not obstructing the view.
Exactly. And so you need to have something in there because I don't think you can really just leave the whole thing up to, I pull up and what car and is it blocking the views?
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of where 15, I don't know if it's 10 or 15 or what the magic number is. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of the one in front of my house right now. I'm thinking, is that, I made sure it's not obstructing the view. I'm trying to think, is that 15 foot off the road? I don't know the answer to that.
yeah, and so I think what it would be is that, okay, now if you're in a car or you're in a larger vehicle, okay, and you pull up to the edge without having to pull in actually onto beyond the actual curb to then not have obstructed views to either the left or to the right of oncoming traffic. So, but, or do you want to roll the dice and say right of way?
No. Which right away? You end up in a lot of problems you say right away.
Yeah, exactly, because,
Utility right away, is that, there's all kind of right away.
yeah, well, easements, right of ways, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
Prescriptive, non-prescriptive, all kinds of issues there.
yep, okay. Okay, anything else anybody else saw in there that you have questions about, whether it's language, whether it's,
The only question I have is who's going to enforce all of this?
okay, well, what I have just like the existing ones, there's language in here that the authority to enforce these is up in, so for example, City of Connersville, well, they have the authority to enforce those and to remove them. Now, then we also, in county, anybody who has the authority to deal with along the edge of the county roads has the authority to remove. It could be the highway department, it could be me. But, it could be the street department, anybody along those lines, but the actual, the body that has control over that road has the authority to remove them. So, yeah. So it's and it is a good question because otherwise it's pointing around as I think all of us know that too many things like that have happened over the years really when it comes to authority. As far as to do things, well, we don't have the resources to do it, so try so-and-so, or try so-and-so, or try so-and-so. Then you get this great big circle that just really frustrates the heck out of people. Okay, well, if there's nothing there, okay. Now, at the start of March, I went to the spring conference for the American Planning Association for the Indiana chapter. And in the legal session, there's really two things really came away with it, out of it. is I think everybody knows by now that, okay, Indiana code has preempted the, local regulation of home-based daycare when the owner lives in the dwelling. Home-based owner-operated daycare, preempted from regulating those. They're permitted by state code. We can't touch them as long as the owner-operator lives there. Now, if someone wants to operate one in a dwelling, but they don't live there, well, you still have they're still required to get a special exception. So that part plays into it. A larger facility, and that's the class, what they call class 1, which is up to 12 children. Beyond that, they have what's called a class 2. Those are the big ones, such as the one that the school run, the school corporation runs. So now those you can still regulate through special exceptions and otherwise. The other big one that preempted by the state of Indiana are group homes for the basically mentally disabled, whether it's learning disabilities or other types of result of accidents. Well, we're preempted from regulating those and keeping them out of residential areas. So the recommendation is to, and it'd be those to actually be kind of fairly easy to clean up. So every place that you allow dwellings is just put in place where, take some cleaning up in the other parts of the zoning code, some small cleanups, but it's adding any place as a permitted use. The cleanest is that has a permitted uses of single family, 1 and 2 family residential uses, is then you just have those as permitted uses, and then what you would do is then say in a parenthesis, as per Indiana code, or succeeding legislation, which is a pretty typical way for those to be phrased with, saying that way anytime anything changes, your legislation your regulation changes. Now, the other one that there's a good chance, whether, if not this next session, but a couple of sessions out, because it usually takes 2 or 3 sessions, there was a piece of legislation. It didn't make it out of committee, but there's support for it, but also as a summer legislative committee. And that's with the drug rehabilitation homes. These are in a residential setting. And the presentation with that is that once someone is out of, whether it's the juvenile facility that the hospital has up north or the wings that they're converting at the hospital now, there's a need for a residential setting. Now, there's a strong possibility that at some point in the future that there's liable to be a similar preemption. Now, if you have things in place beforehand, is the state of Indiana is a little more lenient with any things that's in place first. A good example is, because I don't know how much attention either Leota or Chad were with since we don't have a demand here for Airbnb, but there's a similar piece of legislation with the Airbnb. Now, those who had some Airbnb legislation in place prior to that, other than outright prohibitions, they're allowed to stay with your regulations. But after that point is that you cannot absolutely prohibit things like the Airbnb uses. You can require licenses, you can have some type of tax regime in place. But you can't, say, ban something like Airbnb out of your community. So so you could have that work in your favor by having something in place already. So it could be a comparable differentiation between, say, smaller, say, based on, say, maybe it could be something like, say, in a residential home, say maybe 2 people per bedroom, something like that. But I'm not proposing that right now, but what I probably the best thing before digging into that is if members of the board would like to try for me to arrange the person who spoke or someone from the organization at the APA conference is that who works with the drug rehabilitation homes, something with the history of it, the need for them, how they are, yeah, the way other places are dealing with them, and also then actual regulating them and permitting them. So for example, is if you're turning them into a group home, any case, what you have is they would still need to go, they're still being changed to a class 1 type use, non-residential use. So they still have to go through a change of use through the state of Indiana also. Then in addition to that, then any permits, change of use permit, then any permits of any work that has to be done still have to come through the Area Plan Commission. So there's going to be a lot to it, and a lot of research. It could be something. It could end up being something that's relatively simple language. I don't know yet, but we really need to see who else has them, and probably avoiding the absolute most simple. And I've noticed is that when I've looked for other pieces of legislation. Good example are urban chickens and things like that. I've seen some regulations in some jurisdictions are insanely complicated. So I don't think we want that point. I don't think we would want something that's absolutely, just go for it. So it could be, say, below a certain point, then this is the one with the residential. Something larger than that, then you might require going through more of a process. And so you might then, it may be possible then if something's larger, then you limit it to districts where might be more appropriate because traffic and so on and the number of people's involved with it rather than in a residential neighborhood. Any questions from any board members about these things? So if you'd like me to, then once we kind of get things cleaned up with the sign regulations, I'd like to have something then ready for what we do as far as with the dealing with those 2 preempted uses. So if you'd like me to do that, I will just make a resolution, and then I'll work on the language for that for the board members.
So what's the mind of the board?
I'm not quite sure what his question was.
Okay, all right. What I would like is some direction to proceed with preparing language related to the,
Residential care.
well, not the residential care with that, with the home-based daycare, and then also the group homes for the developmentally disabled. Since we can't keep them out, and it's as impressed, could be important because, say, something happens, I leave, someone else might not be aware of this, could then try to enforce things you can't legally enforce, then it has repercussions of lawsuits and other sorts of things right there. So it's just a matter of, to make sure we have language in the code that makes it clear that those are permitted uses under the Indiana code. The home-based daycare, and then the homes for the group homes for the developmentally disabled.
This would be after we get the sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I move that they'll move forward with that as prudent.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second that we move forward. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay. Director's report.
Director's report.
I move to accept as presented.
Have a motion to accept the report.
I'll make a motion to accept the report.
We have the motion. Is that a second?
Okay.
Okay, have a motion and a second to accept the director's report as presented. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the next item on the agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
The April 9th, 2018 meeting of the Fayette County Board of Zoning Appeals is now called to order. If you'd all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on the agenda would be approval of our minutes from our meeting of March the 12th, 2018. Oh, I'm sorry, roll call. I jumped over that. Go ahead.
Carrie Steele. Bill Crawford.
Here.
James Fisher. Ruby Seiler.
Here.
Jason Waterman.
Here.
Bill McDaniel.
Present.
Colin Judd.
Here.
And myself.
We do have a quorum.
And I did not hear from Ms. Steele, but Mr. Fisher had something come up family-wise, and so as I've always mentioned to people, the family or the work is infinitely more important than this board.
All right. Well, hopefully they'll be able to join us next month.
Yep.
Now, minutes from our meeting of March the 12th, which you should all have. Do we have any corrections or a motion to accept?
I'm not going to motion to accept it.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Minutes have been approved. We have no public hearings tonight, so our next point would be a sign regulation update.
Bill, did you have any comments that you want to make concerning the sign regulations?
No, I went through it and I didn't see anything.
Okay, all right. Okay, now, part 6.
All right. Are you okay?
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on then. The next item then is the update from the spring APA Indiana conference.
Okay, so you heard the discussion about, well, my explanation of these. I don't know if there's anything that you have some questions about or comments.
No, I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
All right.
Limited what we can do when the government tells us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, true
Yep.
enough, true enough.
Bunch of lawyer talk.
Yeah, it is.
They get together and
Yeah,
We like to dictate things.
This
That's
is what
for sure.
True,
Yeah.
very true.
well, which is what I try to do is really, I mean, hopefully I've gotten rid of most of the jargon of the sign regulations.
Yeah. All right, well, the next then is the director's report.
I'll make a motion that we accept it as presented.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, congratulations, Bill. You're off the
Okay,
hook for another
yeah.
month.
Okay, just to update the zoning board members, is today I did the inspection for the Mr. and Mrs. Grubb on the in-law unit. And, has the egress requirements with the doors, and they had the electricians that last week installed the smoke detectors.
Wonderful.
And the inline battery backup smoke detectors are functioning, they passed the test. So it's just a matter of me, finalizing a letter then for them that this has been done. And Mrs. Grubb asked me to put a reminder in it about the 2-year limit, and then just having to come back then with every 2 years, the January of basically be the even number, January 1st of the even number of years that it's still necessary.
Okay,
Well, thank you for the update.
thanks for covering that.
Yep.
Any other items of business to be brought before the board? If not, a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.